Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the call. We are thrilled that you've joined us. We've got a whole slew of people logging in, so we're going to give everyone just a minute or two to jump on the call, and then we'll get started. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining, and we're going to get started in just a minute as people are logging in. Thank you again so much for joining. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started now that we're a minute past the hour. If we can go to the next slide, I want to introduce the speakers. So by way of introduction, my name is Tracy Newell. I'll be your moderator and your host for today's call. And I am so excited. You are in for a treat. You're going to hear from people who are literally changing lives. And it's a lot of lives. And yet in many ways, we are just getting started. So I'm thrilled with today's speakers. You're going to hear from Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown Financial, founder and CEO of Christian Economic Forum. We'll then dive deeper with Dale Dawson, the founder and CEO of Bridge to Rwanda. And then we'll hear from Rosine, who's the director of training programs, who is actually joining us from Rwanda. And then we will also hear from Craig. And Craig Deal is the CEO of Foundations for Farming International and a true expert on this topic. And if we can go to the next slide, I won't read you this agenda, but the long and short of it is we have a lot of information to share with you today. We're going to talk about the global challenge that's going across that is happening around the continent. And then we're going to go deeper into real solutions that are making a difference. Bridge to Rwanda Farms is one of the fastest growing startups on the planet right now, having just gotten started with a very in-depth training program in 2018. They spent about 4 years, like any great startup, really perfecting their product. And about 2 years ago, got involved in government, and they've now trained over 47,000 farmers. And yet we're just getting going. We have the ambitions to do a whole lot more than that. So with that, let's go ahead and get past to Chuck, who can share a little bit about all the work you've been doing and what you have seen going on across the continent.
Well, thank you, Tracy, and thank you for joining us today. I want to give you a big picture overview of the challenge and the opportunity in Africa. Africa is 54 sovereign nations, 18% of the global population, and yet it only produces about 4% of the global GDP. And that's because out of the 1.5 billion estimated residents there, 70% are dependent upon agriculture to survive. And they have struggled for many years with food insecurity. So today we want to propose a solution to one of the world's greatest challenges, which is people lacking enough food to supply their own need. The International Fund for Agricultural Development said farming is 11 times more effective at reducing poverty than any other alternative. There's no better solution to ending poverty than agriculture. As you know, the demographic trends of Africa are they have the fastest growing population in the world, and they will soon have the youngest and largest workforce in the entire world. So these two factors create an opportunity. The opportunity is that Africans have access to arable land, fertile land, and they have a great workforce and people who are willing to work very, very hard. So we believe that Africa, that although it can't fully feed itself today, it's not self-sufficient in agriculture. In the future, Africa could feed the world. And we don't think that vision is out of reach. We think it's very, very possible. So if we'll go to the next slide, we'll look specifically at what's going on in Rwanda, where Dale has joined the cause. By the way, the three of us who are presenting today, Dale and Craig and myself, are all very dear friends. We believe God brought us together to collaborate, to share our ideas and knowledge and expertise together to solve this problem. Dale is an expert in Rwanda. That's where he's been laboring for more than 20 years, helping to grow the economy, making it one of the fastest growing economies in all of Africa. But 69% of the population remain dependent on small plots for farming, less than 1 hectare. And for the Americans on the call, that's about 2.2 acres. And most of the families can't afford what we call a Western solution. They can't afford mechanization, irrigation, GMO seeds, or expensive chemicals or fertilizers. That's just not going to work for them. And so they're very vulnerable. They're vulnerable to extreme weather, to drought, to illness. Many of them lose hope and they start to despise farming because farming hasn't been profitable for them. But if you think about that being reversed, as you look at the data, the population is growing, but the crop yield averages are declining. What if that were reversed? That simple number of average crop yield going in the other direction. So in my 20 plus years of working in Africa, I asked God a simple question: what really works? I didn't want to waste any time on doing something that made myself feel better about what I was doing, but I wanted the outcome to be for the benefit of the people that we were trying to serve. What really works? And years ago, I believe God answered that prayer by making a friendship with Foundations for Farming. If you'll go to the next slide. Foundations for Farming has a proven solution. And let me just say this about them. Most people realize intuitively that agriculture is a great solution. Most people we talk to say they know a farming training program, and there are some really good solutions out there, but some are better than others. Some work a lot more effectively than others. And I know Foundation for Farming to be incredibly effective at delivering results, real meaningful results. And the way I like to describe it is they have a holistic training program that helps small-scale farmers learn to flourish using what they already have. I believe this is a disruptive technology. It is a breakthrough technology to existing solutions. It is 100% a knowledge-based solution, which makes it transferable. And I want you to get into some of the details on the next slide of why their methodology is a breakthrough, why it really does work, and why it's transferable and scalable. And I'm so honored to have our friend, the CEO of Foundation for Farming International, Craig Deal, on the call with us today. He was able to join us. He's in Cape Town, South Africa right now, and he will explain the specifics about the breakthrough technology, what we call the disruptive model that is changing lives in Africa, solving the problem for food insecurity. So welcome, Craig. I look forward to you explaining the model to everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck, and thank you, Tracy, and thank you to everybody listening in. It's a real privilege for me to be on this call. So in a nutshell, I will just share with you that Foundations for Farming was birthed 42 years ago when our founder, Brian Oldreive, he was armed with a scripture from Romans 1, where it says, if you've seen creation, you've seen God, and you're without excuse. And he sought the Lord's face with a real childlike faith, and he sat in some virgin bush in Zimbabwe. And he got a revelation which resulted in a very simple methodology, which we talk about now, and the principles. And it's very contrary to what conventional farming is, and contrary to what the academic world would say. It's simple, it's easy to replicate, and it's actually appropriate for all levels of farming, all regions, all climates, and all crops. So what we see in creation, there is no inversion tillage, and there is a beautiful mulch cover that covers the forest floor. And so these two principles, they form the basis of the technology: minimal soil disturbance and maximum soil cover with mulch. This is what protects our soil from the harsh effects of heavy rain, of wind, of evaporation, and also the scorching sun, and allows the fauna and flora that God has put in place in the soil to flourish and be productive as God intended. This is actually God's fertilizer factory. We couple this simple technology with an implementation management system based on doing things on time to a very high standard that brings glory to God, and without wastage. And the wastage I'm talking about here is principally our precious topsoil, the water which runs off, and the erosion that happens when we destroy the soil structure through plowing and disturbing the soil. Those three things, on time and standard, without wastage, that results in joy, whether you like it or not. And joy speaks into our heart, into our work ethic. So this principles maintain of the high standards and the crop spacings and the rotations and all aspects of farming in God's way are all covered by the methodology here. But in 2011, we were asked the question, what is the smallest amount of land that is required to feed a family of 6 for a whole year? And this led the team in Zimbabwe to develop a concept that is very appropriate, and it's appropriate for national implementation because it's so simple. It's based on the premise that less is more. And we call it Fumfudza. It's a Shona word for new beginnings. And the Fumfudza concept allows rural, small-scale farmers to produce their staple food requirements for their family for a whole year on just 1/16 of a hectare of land, maybe 1/8 of an acre. That is all that's required to feed a family of 6 for 12 months. Now, this can be achieved even by the weak, the elderly, disabled people, and it can be done with nothing more sophisticated than the simple hoe. And over time, even depleted soils can be restored to a level where organic composts are all that are required for abundant growth. And this is an incredible answer for the 600 million small-scale farmers in Africa who can become the backbone of productivity in Africa, not agriculture being associated with poverty. It can be associated with productivity. And I can truly say that a man or a woman with just a hoe can be the best farmers in the world.
Amazing, Craig. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. And so if we go to the next slide, we've established that there is clearly need across the continent and certainly in Rwanda, with 70% of farmers depending on agriculture to feed their family. And we've shared with you a proven solution developed by Foundations for Farming. But I want to go a step deeper and give you some real results. I've been out to the farms myself in Rwanda, and it is mind-blowing. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Mr. Dale Dawson, who's been at the beginnings of this. And Dale, why don't you take us through what you've been up to?
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for everybody who's joined us on this call this morning. I want to give you a little background. I've been in Rwanda for 20 years. We started Bridge to Rwanda about 17 years ago, about the time I joined President Kagame's advisory council. The purpose of Bridge to Rwanda was to come alongside Rwanda's leaders and help them fulfill the vision they had for their country to be a fast growing, a fast developing country, market driven, to be a demonstration to the rest of Africa about what was possible. Our role in this for the last 17 years primarily has focused on how in developing the next generation of young leaders who are going to keep Rwanda developing and growing for the next several decades. And in that effort, we have helped identify some of the most promising young people coming out of high school. Over the last 10, 12 years, we've helped over 500 students earn about $120 million of scholarships to 100 of the best schools in the world, including many of them in the United States. But we've also helped these young people launch their careers back in Africa by building a network of over 350 employers in Rwanda and helping place more than 850 internships and 350 jobs in the continent or in the country over the last 10 years. We had heard about Foundations for Farming more than a decade ago. We met Craig and the founder, Brian Oldrive, through Chuck at a Christian Economic Forum. We were very, very impressed by Craig and Brian and what they were doing, but it was not relevant to us. That's not what we were about. We were about developing young talent for the country. And I have to say, even though I didn't really pursue it very much, there was a certain skepticism about how did these two guys down in Zimbabwe figure out a new way of farming after thousands of years of doing this. That all changed for us at the beginning of 2018 when a friend of ours gave us 15 acres of beautiful farmland on a lake in eastern Rwanda. At the same time, we had a friend who'd built a commercial feed mill, and he wanted to start a project doing soybean trials, and he was willing to put up all the money to help us launch a farm. About that same time, you're going to meet a young woman named Rosine, who was one of our scholars who was in America, had great opportunities, who felt God calling her back to do farming. And she came back. We sent her and a number of other people to Zimbabwe to get trained. And we began to experiment and to test the concept of Foundations for Farming in Rwanda. We spent 4 years as an incubator planting all kinds of demo farms, planting all kinds of crops, training farmers and people in churches. More important, we actually set up a internship program for agriculture graduates from the University of Rwanda who had graduated from school with very little practical training. And we got them working with us. After 4 years, we were convinced that Foundations for Farming worked. We had not grown a crop anywhere in any place with any different kind of produce that didn't outperform every other farmer we could see. And we were confident that we had something that really would change the world. And we began to pray, God, what do you want us to do with this? How do we scale it? How do we impact it? God opened a door 2 years ago. In the summer of 2022, I had a meeting with President Kagame. I knew he was concerned. He had been speaking in the country about the concern for food insecurity and for the rising cost of chemical fertilizers and irrigation systems. And he had always been concerned about the devastating impact of soil erosion that was caused in the land of 1,000 hills. So when I explained to him the results we were getting from Foundation for Farming, he immediately called in the Minister of Agriculture and said, let's do something with this. Let's find out if this really works. So we immediately trained more than 300 government agronomists and champion farmers, and they planted 120 plots all over Rwanda to see what would be the impact. And if we'll go to the next slide, I'll show you what the results were. By using Foundations for Farming, crop yields across the board were up 100 to 200%. That meant that the average crop for maize in Rwanda was a little less than two tons per hectare. Foundations for Farming was getting 4 to 6 tons per hectare. It decreased the amount of labor because we don't plow the field by 45%, and it reduced the cost of inputs like fertilizer and seed by 20%. As important, 93% of the farms that adopted conservation agriculture saw no soil erosion at all. As a result, the Minister of Agriculture said to us, we've got 2.4 million Rwandan farmers who need to see this methodology. We need them to adopt this to our country. And as a result, in 2023, we trained all of the government agents and agronomists in the country, hundreds of champion farmers. They in turn went out and trained 45,000 farmers and planted 1,300 demonstration plots around the country. We took our small band of university graduates who were working as interns, and we set up a call center. We set up WhatsApp groups. We sent our interns out into the field to see what was really happening. As a result of that, we developed a very positive relationship with the government of Rwanda. We saw widespread adoption. We got a good start on adopting Foundations for Farming and conservation agriculture in Rwanda. But we sat down with the minister and he said, there's more to this adoption program than just feeding families. If you'll go to the next slide, what Rwanda is concerned about is food self-sufficiency. If you can divide the world into those countries that make it grow enough food to feed their population and those that don't, and most of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa do not grow enough food to feed them. And this creates an enormous economic, macroeconomic deficit for these countries to prosper. If you can look at this chart, beans, maize, and potatoes are the three main subsistence crops in Rwanda. Today, you see in the first column how much Rwanda consumes, and you can see the current deficit of how much they have to import from outside the country. If Foundations for Farming were adopted by all the farmers in Rwanda, you can see the enormous surplus that the country would be able to produce in these three basic numbers. The other thing that this really changes at the macro level of a government is that when 2/3 of your population are vulnerable, and if they have a bad crop, and if their crops don't work, the government's priority has to be to feed these people. If you can, they effectively, if they can feed themselves and they can produce surplus, they can create wealth. And you've turned 2/3 of your population from a liability to an asset. That's what Rwanda is targeting. That's what they want to accomplish. And if they can accomplish it, it could be accomplished anywhere. Let's go to the next slide. In 2024, after that year, and we looked at this year and next year and said, we've got to come up with a solution that really accelerates the scaling of Foundations for Farming across the whole country. The number one innovation that we think will make the biggest difference in acceleration is to expand our university graduate internship program into a 12-month fellowship. We want to go from 20 or 30 interns to 120 fellows who will work for us for a year, and we will locate in every district in the country to spend 24/7 encouraging, promoting, teaching farmers to adopt conservation agriculture. Seeing is believing with farmers in Africa. And until a farmer sees a plot that is not tilled outperformed their plots, they won't even try it. So the goal is there's almost 15,000 villages in Rwanda. Before the end of 2025, we want to see a demo plot in every single village in the country. And finally, the vision is that if Rwanda can accomplish these goals, it will become a model for conservation agriculture throughout Africa. And we expect, given Rwanda's position as a demonstration, a progression of the continent, that we're going to see lots of countries and lots of organizations come to Rwanda and ask, how did you do this? And we want to be able to set up a Foundations for Farming training hub in Kigali so that we can train thousands of other trainers to send out around the continent. Thank you.
Awesome, Dale. So you covered a lot. I do want to give a shout out. We have people asking questions in the Q&A window, and we are going to leave time to make this interactive. So please get your questions listed. But to cover what Dale just said, again, 69% of the farmers in Rwanda are just trying to feed their families. And we're seeing yields of 100% increase with the vision and the intent to allow farmers to have a surplus. And now we're talking about creating wealth and creating jobs. So huge impact to these people. And yet Dale also said seeing is believing for the farmers, but also I know for each of you. And so we've got a short video that we want to share with you where you're going to hear from one of the farmers and what he has to say about Bridge Rwanda Farms and Foundations for Farming. So let's roll the video.
My name is Nshimiyimana Simeon. I learned how to farm when I was 13. That is why I began my farming career until 2020, when I stopped planting crops. I would compare the amount I invested with the return and found myself at a loss. I even dared to say that farming was not profitable and did not matter. God, whenever I think about it, I thank you for blessing us with conservation agriculture. We did not know about this way of farming. Our agronomist called me and told me about a training. I asked him what type of training it was, and he told me it was a conservation agriculture training in Mulindi, Kigali. In our first training, I did not believe that this way of farming was possible. I was in the group. I was saying, is this really true? Or are you deceiving us? I was still skeptical because it was my first time hearing about farming without plowing. I came back home and took a rope to measure the Fuvuza plot they told us about, which can feed our family. I set up the 16-meter by 39-meter plot and followed its principles. I set up another plot using the conventional way of farming to compare it with the Fuvuza plot. On the Fuvuza plot, I got 6 sacks of maize, and for the conventional way of farming, I got 1.5 sacks. That is a significant difference. A produce of 600 kg and 150 kg on the same plot. After seeing its harvest, my mindset changed to believing that farming is not only profitable, but also provides a great harvest. We have sufficient food for our home. The remainder is sold at the market. We have expanded our land from 1/16 of a hectare to 7 hectares, all using conservation agriculture. My next goal is to produce 20 tons. I believe that is possible. I have faith. With conservation agriculture, it is possible. When the time comes, God blesses his people with a gift, and this is a gift from God.
I can't imagine a more powerful testimony than that. Literally going from 1/16 of a hectare to 7 acres and a thriving farming environment and business. I want to add to that testimonial with an amazing woman that Dale mentioned earlier, and I did as well. Rosine is joining us from Rwanda today, and she is at the forefront of leading this effort as the director of training. So Rosine, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got involved with Bridge to Rwanda Farms?
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. It's so great to hear all these amazing stories. And I really have to say this. This is God's story. He's the hero of everything. Because for me, I didn't plan this. It was maybe an accident, but God had the plan all along. So I grew up in Kigali to two parents, one a construction technician and another a teacher. And being a city girl, I never dreamed of being a farmer, really. Like that was not anywhere in my dreams or in my high school education. But I always dreamed of being an entrepreneur and maybe being an engineer, but mostly an entrepreneur and create businesses in Rwanda. God helped me and connected me to Bridge to Rwanda right after high school. And he blessed me with a scholarship through the help of B2R to Bamson College, where I did my undergraduate studies in entrepreneurship and accounting. And all that was in the hopes to, create businesses and become a business consultant and more. And a little bit halfway through my journey at Bamson, I joined PricewaterhouseCoopers through an internship where I worked in auditing and was on a track to work for them after graduation. And really, I was set on becoming a CPA in Massachusetts and really continue my work there, get some experience, maybe eventually return to Rwanda and work in the business sector. Well, God had a plan, of course, and my senior year, fall semester, about to end, one day after a worship night at Babson, God spoke to me very clearly, a thing that I will never forget, and said, Rosine, I want you to go back to Rwanda, stop everything you are doing with PwC and go become a farmer. That was really crazy because it's something that I never dreamed about, and said, God, like, are you serious? Really, like a farmer? And yeah, he was right. Yeah, he said, yes, you need to go become a farmer. And it was the one industry that would have the most impact, although I had absolutely no idea what it meant to work in farming or the impact or the challenges or the problems. I was out of clue. And but I really wanted to, I said to God, I will obey him, although I presented him with three challenges. I said, Lord, if I am to do this, I will need to have a land, I will need to have some startup capital, and I will need to have some level of training. And all three currently are not present. Therefore, this looks like it's not going to work. It was on Thursday, and on Sunday, they gave me a call and laid out to me all the three opportunities he mentioned earlier. How a friend of theirs gave them 15 acres of land on a lake in Rwanda, and how a couple an entrepreneur wanted to give the startup capital, and also of foundations for farming, a training that will change farmers' lives down in Zimbabwe. So, and I knew God was responding to those three challenges without me saying them to anyone else but God. And I took that as a confirmation to know that God really wanted me to come back. Soon as after graduation, I was on the plane back home. And when I got to Rwanda, really, I had to say it was an embarrassment for me and part of my family, really wasting my global education to go work in a village with farmers. But I think God wanted to teach me a little bit about humility and how much he cares about smallholder farmers, because they are the most neglected people sometimes in our society, and yet they are the people God loves the most, like, and really sharing his plan and to feed us, the whole planet, and feed them. I had a lot to learn about God's heart for farmers. And so after Foundations for Farming, meeting Craig and Brian and all the trainers down in Zimbabwe, I was energized to come and implement everything I saw in Rwanda. And when we planted, it was it was nothing like what I had ever dreamt of, because our yields were so different. You will look at farms side by side, you will think it's from two different countries. And I saw with my own eyes, God redeem the most depleted soils and have abundant harvest. I saw God do miracles like I had never seen before in my life. And I vowed to him that I will share this with anybody who will listen. And that's how we started training people, and God did miracles. Most of the story Dale has already shared. And for me to see people like Simeon, was walking on the land with Simeon and seeing how much progress he has had. And I just say, God, thank you so much for blessing us with the, with the opportunity to be able to see lives really truly transformed. One thing I have seen is one powerful story I can share is one day we are with the Minister of Agriculture, and he had come to visit one of our plots. It was in the middle of a drought, and we were in a potato farm in the north of the country. All the potato farmers in the neighborhood, their potatoes had wilted. And strange enough, he comes to our fields and our potatoes are still standing after like about 1 month and a half of no rain. And one grandma walks past and comes into the field, walks to the minister and tells him, look, before I tried this way of farming, on my small plot, I used to have 2 months of food. But when I started doing this way of planting foundations for farming, now I have 7 months of food. And the minister asked him, so how many kilograms do you have before and after? And he says, those of kilograms is for you who went to university. All I know is I had food for 2 months and now I have food for 7 months. And just to see that level of transformation and confidence in the simplicity of things without adding extra chemicals or mechanization or anything, just a whole and a simple method put in place with on time at standard without waste with joy, it really transformed the life. And for me, concluding this in a time where the world has a lot of bad news. If you look at the TV or the news, you read everywhere, there is a whole lot of shocking news everywhere. I am so energized and I am so thankful to God that he gives us a chance to share good news of Jesus' plan that brings hope and joy without using a lot. And I am grateful to be on the forefront working with our team here in Rwanda and the teams across Africa with Craig Deal's team and others, really spreading that good news on a daily basis and seeing it transform lives for the better. Thank you.
Rosine, your energy and excitement is just contagious, and can't thank you enough for what you've done for so many, moving from PwC to leading this effort on the ground in Rwanda. So just incredible. And so, we've talked a bit about the impact that the organization is striving to have with 2.4 million farmers in Rwanda, and yet that's in many ways just the beginning. So I'm going to hand back to Chuck if we go to the next slide. And can you talk a little bit about the potential to help the entire continent?
Yeah, Tracy, I think it's a historic opportunity. If you think about the transformation of China from a nation with millions of peasants who were starving to a developed world, to a developed economy, they started in 1980 when they began manufacturing, because that's what they were able to do. They were good with those processes, and manufacturing moved into China, and it built the fastest exit out of poverty that the world has seen. We think Africa is in a similar position by using what they already have, which is access to farmland. Hundreds of millions of people have at least 2 acres, in some cases up to 5 acres, that can become very, very productive, solving for food insecurity in Africa. This can be done in our lifetime. And as we've seen, what will happen is people become entrepreneurs. They begin to diversify. They begin to start businesses. They begin to flourish using what they already have, which is really the only sustainable model for flourishing, is using locally available resources. And to accomplish that, to scale across the nation, we need strategic training hubs. And we believe Rwanda can be that strategic training hub for the region all throughout Eastern Africa. Already, they have trained 91 leaders from 11 different countries, and that means they're multiplying. Rwanda has an effect on people when they visit it. It's a wow factor. They see a nation that's clean and safe and well organized, and they love going there. But also, the training staff is multilingual. They're highly capable people. And so we want to see this training hub developed so that more and more people of the 600, maybe 700 million people in the continent can get this knowledge in their hands. And it does multiply virally. Once success is demonstrated, at least 10 other neighbors will come and ask, how did you do this? And so this is a big part of Rwanda being, why we're presenting today, is not only to reach the nation of Rwanda, but to scale throughout the continent. And some may ask, well, why isn't everybody knocking down your door? The truth is, right now, we have more momentum than we've ever had. The nation of Zimbabwe is on their second national training rollout. We've signed a memorandum of agreement and have begun training in Eswatini. We're also working with the president of Madagascar to roll out on a national scale. He has a vision to train 5 million farmers there. And so for all of this momentum to be harnessed, we need to follow Dale's lead in getting these young, basically extension agents trained to have the DNA in their heart and be able to multiply it through other leaders. And we believe that can happen in Rwanda. And then one final point is that the training is holistic. It includes faith, farming, family, and finances. We call it the 4 F's, and every student gets exposed to good biblical teaching in all 4 of those areas, and that's what's creating the momentum. So I hope that explains why we believe your support going into Rwanda will reach not only that nation, which I think could become the first nation to fully flourish and to end food insecurity in all of sub-Saharan Africa, but it can also be a training hub to multiply.
I love that, Chuck. And you've answered one of the questions. So there are many questions coming in. Feel free to get your questions into the Q&A panel. But you answered one of the questions is the 4 F's. So faith, family, farming, and finances. And I've been to the farms, and literally all 4 of those go into this practice. But I want to get to how you can help. If we go to the next slide, Dale, I know you need help. So how can the people on this call make a difference to this amazing effort that you're leading?
Thanks, Tracy. You know, I've been in Rwanda and Africa for 20 years. I've built schools for hundreds of genocide orphans. I've built a microfinance bank to serve thousands of small entrepreneurs. I have identified hundreds of students who we've helped get scholarships and jobs through internships. But nothing I have worked on in the last 20 years has the potential of transforming lives and of whole countries more than Foundations for Farming. As Simeon said, God has given us a gift, and it's a gift he gave to us that we can share with the poorest and most vulnerable people in the world. It's a gift that allows them to have hope and dignity and the power to take care of their children. Foundations for Farming has enormous leverage. We are not building an institution. We are building a movement of thousands of young trainers who will go out and promote and teach and encourage farmers to change the way they're doing farming. For $3,000 a year, we can put a university graduate, a B2R fellow, in the field for a year who will change the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of farmers. And for $550 and the cost of transportation, we can bring people from all over the continent to Rwanda and train trainers that we can then send back to their country and help them launch training programs in their country. If you want to join us, you will never find a better return on your investment for transforming lives than B2R Farms and Foundations for Farming.
And so how can you get involved? You can go to the website, you can scan the QR code to make your donation. And as Dale just mentioned, you will be impacting so many people when you do. We so much appreciate your time and your support as we move forward. And so there have been several questions coming in. I'm actually going to start, Craig, with you. You've been involved with Foundations for Farming as a co-founder for many, many years. What can you share about the opportunities for national rollouts? We've talked quite a bit about Rwanda, but what about some of the other countries? What's the potential there? And do you think the interest will continue at the rate you've seen to date?
Thank you, Tracy. Just a point of correction, I'm not the co-founder. I'm the present CEO who started off as the armor bearer to the founder. But yes, I believe that this has grown into a movement of God. It was birthed 42 years ago, and I believe it will continue to grow and expand in the nations at God's pace and by his sovereign will. However, we need to remain faithful to our calling, and we must never, ever step over the first and foundational building block that started this whole journey, which was serving the very poor, the least, the last on the lost, with an Isaiah 58 blueprint for helping those that have less than us. And this is Jesus's upside down way. You serve the folks at the bottom, and then it leads governments and those in authority to see what's happening down there and to see what's possible. And then they call and ask for implementation at a national scale. So I believe these rollouts will, by default, continue across the nation as presidents and those in authority speak to one another, and they see countries that have been food insecure for many years suddenly becoming food secure through household food security. And then these rollouts will by default go across nations, and they also have the ability to build a middle class. And we're not just talking about household food security, we go beyond that because we're teaching holistically faith, family, farming, and finances. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Dale, I'm going to ask you this question. There's a lot of questions around metrics, and because you have done this rollout program through the government, I know you've got lots and lots of metrics, but you covered this briefly in a previous slide. But if someone does donate, $1,000 or $10,000, how should they think about how that donation will be leveraged? How will that make a difference?
Well, we will spend the money on training. So we're going to train trainers, and we're going to put those trainers into the field. So, our goal this year is to be able to fund 120 trainers in Rwanda, in the villages, who are constantly training. So at $3,000, that's $360,000. We'll create a private nationwide network of field agents that will work with farmers. We believe that they have the potential to literally train and to get farmers to adopt in the thousands. We think that, we've got 45,000 farmers trained. We've got a couple of thousand plots planted. We think that in the next 15 months that we can have 15,000 plots with 120 field agents. We can put a plot in every single village in the country.
Yeah, we have big goals, and we so appreciate everyone's support as we really accelerate. There are many questions. Rosine, I think this one is for you. There are many questions from people asking, how can I get involved in the training? What does the training entail? There's someone in human resources saying, do I have to be a farmer to be a trainer? And given that you're trained to be an accountant, I'm thinking that the answer is no, that this is something anyone can learn. But Rosine, can you just share a little bit for people that want to know more about how to get involved in the training, what that would look like?
Absolutely. So to get the training really is simple. We have our website, b2rfarms.com, where people can see, where you can see training schedule of the offerings that we currently have. It's supposed mostly each month, depending on demand. And so we will love to serve you. Please sign up on the website, and we will love to give you the training. As far as who is eligible, anyone is eligible. Just have the passion to be transformed by this God-given vision. Anyone can be a farmer. If I was a farmer, if I'm a farmer, then you can be more than farmer yourself. And someone was also asking, is it in any particular location in the country? No, we are in all districts in the country currently. All 30 districts are covered, having demonstration farms, like Dale mentioned, to almost every single village. And if you can't come to the central location, like for the monthly trainings for farmers, you can look at a sector agent in your district, particular district sector agronomist. They will be more than happy to give you a training. Also, we have Bridge to Rwanda staff fellows all across all districts in Rwanda, who will be more than happy to assist you with any kind of training, helping you set up a farm. So those are the options that are available. But for people who want to be trainers of trainers, we have a training for trainers of trainers available for 1 week in Kigali, which you can sign up for on the website.
Terrific. Thank you for that. And there's a number of people reaching out in adjacent areas that are saying, hey, I'd like to help too. So please do, just go to the website, and the team is very responsive, and we would love to have your help. There's specifically someone focused on water capture, and we would love to have your help. And then, Chuck, I'm going to direct this question to you. Someone's asking, can you say a bit more, a concise explanation of the 4 F's? So you mentioned them very quickly, but can you share a bit about how you chose those 4 F's and what your real deliverable or your goal is in each of them?
Well, when you look at poverty holistically, what you see is the breakdown of the family. And some don't know which is the cause and which is the effect. But I believe that when persistent hunger exists, it's very difficult to hold the family together. Men have to disperse to go and find work. They have to labor every day as hard as they can simply to put food on the table. And sometimes when they're not effective at that, it brings shame, and the family begins to disintegrate. But the family is the backbone of all of society. God designed us to flourish inside a family. It was the first thing he told the Israelites when they became refugees in Babylon, to get married and to have children and to multiply, to increase and not decrease. And so we want to see the family unit strong. 2 are better than 1, and that's a promise of God. And when the family is strengthened, then you see flourishing can come about on a firm foundation. Faith addresses the issues that change our character. God entrusts much to those who are faithful with little. That's a promise in Luke 16. And so faith addresses that part of it. And then, of course, we've talked extensively about the farming. But ultimately, our part, Crown's part, is to teach stewardship of the fruit of that land. When you are a good steward of the land and it gives you a reward for your stewardship, then you have to be faithful in managing it. That means learning to work, give, save, spend, and invest, live on a budget, to reinvest your profits. And that's what allows a family to diversify, to move from simply farming to now having a full enterprise. And Dale and Craig and myself have seen that happen over and over and over again, where this is the launching pad for creating a middle class. And we think that's what God has called us to do, to not just get people out of poverty, but to help them flourish and to move into the middle class.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. And financial literacy is a big piece of this entire program. So thank you. So with that, we are getting many questions from people that want to get involved in the program. I would ask you to send a note via the website, and the team will definitely get back to you on that. And I think we've gotten through most of the questions at this point. So with that, I'm going to thank our moderator, sorry, our hosts for today's calls, our speakers, Chuck, Dale, Craig, Rosine. You're simply amazing. And then I'd also like to thank all of you that have so kindly spent your morning, your afternoon, or your evening with us. We can't thank you enough for the support, and I would encourage you to go to the website to donate. We really do need your help, and you're making a huge difference to many when you do. So with that, thank you all. And that will conclude today's session.
Thank you, Tracy.
Hey, you guys are great.
Thank you.